Okay, guys, thank you for tuning in. It is 6 days since the Antifa attack down in Brighton. Now, we've got a special guest coming up. Some of you would have seen the video of Taylor, who was speaking in Norwich. She had an 11-year-old daughter who fell victim to this gender ideology cult. And Taylor's got a fantastic story to tell. So she's coming up very, very shortly. What I'd just like to say is a big thank you to everybody that has reached out after the episode down in Brighton, and especially to all the people that have said you want to come and be my bodyguard. Thank you so much. At the moment, I'm going to continue to do it as I've been doing it because I'm just a small guy, and if I was to bring another big guy with me to look after me, it may dissuade people coming to speak to me. So at the moment, I'm just going to leave it as it is, but there may come a day in the future that I do need a bodyguard. So I might come calling on you guys. Next. Oh, also, I've got a lawyer on speed dial as well now. So another person that was a subscriber to the channel, he's reached out to me and he's on speed dial and he's been helping me draft emails and letters to the police. When I find out, when Surrey police get back to me to let me know how the investigation is going, I'll bring that news to you as well. One more thing before I bring Taylor on. I'm going to be going international with this campaign as well. I can't say too much about that at the moment because the details haven't been finalized, but I'm going to be traveling to different countries, speaking to experts, academics, and also, crucially, most importantly, to detransitioners as well. That's going to be happening later in the year, so stay tuned for that. Right, so without further ado, what I'm going to do, if I can press the right button, I'm going to bring Taylor into the studio now. Here we go. Hi, Taylor.
Hello, how are
How
you?
you, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I thought I'd do the red, white, and blue for the Union Jack type thing
Fantastic.
going on here today. So, no, thank you for having me on, Steve. It's very much appreciated.
No, brilliant. Yeah, so you reached out to me a few weeks ago now, actually before Brighton, and you said you've got a story to tell. So do you want to start by giving people a little bit of background as to who you are, and then just start telling us your story, because I'm sure people are going to be all ears.
Yeah, well, it depends on how far you want me to go back. So, I'm a mum, two daughters, had a pretty normal life, more normal childhood and stuff. Survived an abusive marriage, got out of that in 2018, discovered feminism and advocacy, and started helping victims and survivors of domestic abuse. And then obviously lockdown happened and things, and my daughters were 11, and I think my younger one was about 9 or 10, they're very close in age. And thanks to my 11-year-old, I discovered this ideology called trans. And because she announced to me, well, not initially, she went through what a lot of the kids, the way that they go through the whole alphabet first. So announced to me that she was sort of bisexual, they, them was for a while, non-binary, lesbian. Obviously, I'd heard of the LGB and always been a supporter of the LGB, so everything was fine. But then the gender started to slip in, and it kind of caught me off guard, and I didn't know what it was all about. And I suppose all the learning that I took at the time, for my shame really, was from my 11-year-old. She was kind of teaching me what it was all about. Of course, she was on TikTok at the time, so I think she got a lot of it off TikTok. Got the usual spiel that a lot of parents will have heard before, that, you know, I've always been trans, mum, you know, I've always felt like I was a boy and all the rest of it. You just didn't realise it, and I didn't realise it until I could name it and all the rest of it. And so I went along with it, and I actually affirmed my daughter for it was over a year, somewhere between a year and year and a half, because it was around Christmas going from 2020 to 2021, and I didn't peak until the Easter of 22, and I affirmed her for all of that time. And when I say affirmed, I called her by he, him pronouns. I called her by a boy's name she'd selected.
Can I just interject one quickly?
Of course.
How did that feel for you, having to do that?
Oh, that's a good question, because I've got to try and go back. You know what it was? I didn't believe it. I mean, obviously, I don't think I ever, well, obviously, I never believed that she was an actual boy, or that she could ever be a boy or a man. But I believed that she believed that this was happening. And I thought it was all part of the gay rights movement, I have to say. And I thought it was all really quite innocent, and wasn't damaging. And so I did kind of throw myself into it a little bit. I was never a TRA. I wasn't like that. I wasn't, militant about it.
So for those people that don't
I
know,
fought her corner.
yeah.
Yeah.
For those people that don't know, a TRA is a trans rights activist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's weird because I never felt, a lot of parents say that, that they probably knew something about it, and so just felt that gut feeling that it was wrong from the beginning. But because I never really got that gut feeling, I never sort of felt grief as such. And my daughter at the time, to be fair, through most of the first year or so of her social transition, if you like, apart from the pronouns and the name and the hairstyle, she largely stayed the same. She still dressed quite girly, although her fashion changed. She started wearing like over the knee socks and these little skater skirts. I've learned since that it's that kind of anime look, and it's what a lot of the perverty type of young men like to wear when that want to be women and stuff. So she still looked really girly and acted really girly. So to be honest, I just thought she's just going to be a lesbian, and that's absolutely fine. And so let's just roll with it, I must admit.
Do you think it was TikTok? Because obviously, I mean, we know this, but people might not know. These young kids are getting influence on social media channels. Was it just TikTok that she was going on? Or because I've got a TikTok channel as well, and once I started clicking to follow one of the which was Dimitri, it started throwing others at me, and all of a sudden now, every time I go on it, you've got people that are trans, just dancing and showing off the scars and things like that. So was it just TikTok, or was it any others?
TikTok was about 95% of it. The other 5%, she had a Snapchat, but that was all she had. I'll tell you about TikTok. That's something you might not know, because not many people do know this when I tell them. That, I mean, when I first fled their dad, the first thing he did was he bought them both smartphones, brand new iPhones, which really, can I swear on here? I don't know, but really annoyed me, because they were young and I didn't want them to have that kind of technology in the hands of that age. And at that point, my eldest had discovered an app called Musical.ly, and it was advertised to children, I would say probably 16 and under. And I did check this app out, because I do check. I was checking the phones and making sure I made sure they didn't set up a Facebook account and stuff like that, and Twitter, because I know what it's all about. I've never really had Snapchat, so I didn't know too much about that. But this app, Musical.ly, looked really, really innocent, and at the time it was. And this was 2018, and all it was, there was only really kids on it, and sometimes like housewives and stuff doing funny little things. And it was just, you were able to just upload like 30-second little clips of like dance moves, or dubbing over a funny little like SNL skit type thing. And it all seemed really innocent, and she was really getting into it. And back then she loved her singing and her dancing, and I'm an ex-pro singer, so I was all for it. And she was practicing all these dances, because it got to the point where there would be certain songs trending on Musically and certain dance moves that were trending. And she even taught me a few of them, and I did them with her on TikTok. Now,
Yeah.
what people don't know, as soon as lockdown happened, TikTok, Musically morphed into TikTok. Musically is TikTok. It's the same app, but whoever, China, whoever owns TikTok, changed the name from Musically to TikTok, and slowly but surely over the course through lockdown, it became what it is now. But of course, all the kids that were on Musically stayed on it.
Right.
So then, yeah, she was on there then with adults, and a lot of very dangerous adults. So
Yeah, I think TikTok actually pays people to sing songs of certain artists, doesn't it? This is why that you see them just dancing and singing to these lyrics, because it promotes the songs, and then they get a bit of a kickback for it if they get a certain amount of views.
Right.
So
I've never really got into TikTok, I must
yeah,
admit. So I've got an account so that I can keep an eye on the kids. But my eldest, when I peaked, I got her off TikTok.
Yeah, I went
so
on it
she's not on anything.
with my channel because I know that the kids are there, so we can actually use it as a tool, you know. So I'm promoting the stuff that I'm doing on there. I couldn't believe it. 2 of the videos of the attack in Chester has had almost 2.5 million views each. So
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how the algorithm works. So anyway, continue with the story of how your daughter fell into the cult.
Yeah, so like I say, it was all, I mean, I'm sort of shortening it, but you know, in real time, it wasn't like an overnight thing. So it was just sort of, you know, it was over the course of, I filmed her for a year and a half, but it didn't go straight to he, him pronouns and this is my name or anything. You know, that was during the course of the time. Although she had gone to, by the time she went back to school after Easter in 21, which was after the final lockdown, and they'd started going in physically again, we did have a meeting, and that's when I did say, can we change the pronouns and the name? I don't think I changed it officially on the database at that point, but I said, this is what she wants to be called, and I'm happy to allow the teachers to do that. And I remember the teacher saying, what uniform do you want to wear? Are you going to switch to the boys' uniform or continue with the girls? And she said, I'm going to continue with the girls. But then it started getting strange, because her friend circle, there was about 5 of them, all girls, all then started jumping on the bandwagon. And they were all part of the alphabet soup. There was another trans, there was a pansexual, there was a they, them. And it all started to, I don't know, and it was then that I thought, you know what, this is a social contagion, and they're just girls, and they're just, you know, not having fun, but just experimenting with things. And I thought, you know, they're not harming anybody, they're not harming themselves. This is what I was thinking at the time. So it was just something I just sort of let be. And at the time, you know, I really wished that I had done the research properly. But the thing is, even at this point, I'd never heard of, because I wasn't in those circles, even online, I'd never heard of the word transphobic or TERF or puberty blockers or men and women's sports. I didn't know any of that was going on at this point. So to me, it was kind of like girls just being silly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the thing is, this thing is so absurd that it flew in under the public radar, and when it was brought to the attention, it was just fobbed off a little bit. It's like the scene out of Monty Python's Life of Brian. You know, I want to be a woman, and they just make a big joke about it, and people. You know, people just thought, oh, it's just nonsense. But this ideology got its claws into all the institutions.
Yeah, it really did slip under the radar, I think, and that proved just how insidious it is, I think.
And they don't want to talk about it, do they? That's the thing. And this is one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm trying to bring this to the public knowledge. I'm trying to sing it from the rooftops, and, you know, interviews like this are going to do that. So you said you'd only done a little bit of a research. What made you do more?
Did I even do any kind of research? Well, I don't know whether I even did any kind of research. I remember that I'd found a local LGBTQ youth group. I was handed a leaflet. Now, where was I handed the leaflet? It might have been actually at the hospital, because, right, so my daughter was 12 at this point, and she had started her menstrual cycle very soon after her 12th birthday, which she found very triggering. So she wanted to go on the pill to stop her periods. And said she found them painful anyway, and I did at her age and stuff, and I took the pill to stop my periods back then. So we went, and I must admit, when we were at the appointment, and I said he wants to go on the pill so that he can stop his periods.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I remember thinking at the time, that sounds weird, but I just kind of brushed it off.
How did the doctor react when you said that? When you were using?
Oh, it was a really affirming hospital. It was in Nottinghamshire.
Right.
And we were in the gender clinic part of it. So
right.
That's where they were transitioning the kids. So trust me, the close down of the Tavistock, that's the tip of the iceberg. There are still clinics everywhere.
Yes.
Trust me. And they gave me a leaflet and said that there was a local charity. It's called Think to Speak with the number 2. They were on Twitter, but I chased them off. But I got a leaflet, and they held monthly meetings for LGBT youth, so 18 and under. And we went to 3 of those. And on the second time that I went, the parents were all put into a back room, and all the kids were put into another room. So we didn't know what was going on. We were all given a cup of tea
to
talk amongst ourselves. And all of our kids were anything between 8 and 16. And I discovered on the second meeting, that's when I first started hearing about puberty blockers. And 2 of the parents had their kids on puberty blockers. And they offered me Helen Weberly's number from Gender GP.
Right.
And said, you should get your kid on puberty blockers. And
should we just
when the cogs started turning a little bit. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Well, let's
going
just
too fast.
No, not at all. I just don't want you to say something that we or mention a person that we know about, but our audience might not. So was this? I'm taking it. I'm not sure. Was the Tavistock open, or had it been closed by now?
It was still open at that point.
Right, but there's massive waiting lists.
This was about 21.
Right.
So I think the cast review was obviously being undertaken, but I didn't know that anything about it.
Yeah.
And the Tavistock hadn't been closed at that point. No.
Right. Let me just interject, because you mentioned the name of a GP called Helen Weberly. So there is Helen Weberly and her husband.
Yeah, Michael.
So yeah, I know about these 2, but your knowledge is probably a little bit more in depth than mine. So you tell me about.
I don't. Well, at the time, obviously, I didn't know anything about them. Although the thing that got the cogs turning was, the other mother who offered me the number said it has to be kept on the DL, on the down low, because she's currently not got her license. So you'd have to ring her directly. She's not working for the NHS at the moment. And I was thinking, okay, that all just sounds a little bit weird. But I thought, well, maybe it's just a private thing. It wasn't until I went down the rabbit hole that I learned that her husband Michael had been struck off for essentially, well, I don't want to defame myself, but he was under investigation, wasn't he, for harming children and putting them on puberty blockers. And then she was
call, a 10-minute video conference call, and they were handing out puberty blockers. I got that information, I think, from a book that I read, possibly Helen Joyce's book.
Right, yeah.
I think it was in there.
I've got it on my shelf, just over there, Helen's book. Yeah.
So both of them were struck off, and now they've set up a private clinic. They're living out of the country. I think they're living in
Singapore.
I
They
think
were
the
Spain, now or they're running it via Singapore, I think. Yeah.
business is being run by Singapore, and they're advertising on the web. The website, I think, is Gender GP,
Yes.
and I think
Yeah.
so. So it might be gendergp.com or something like that. People will be able to search
Yeah,
it.
it's Gender GP, because the reason why I paused was because I know that there's some other, when the Tavistock was shut down, some of the staff, the affirming staff, the mentalists, have set up their own clinic, and I think it's called Gender Plus or something.
Okay, yeah.
So it's quite similar to Gender GP, but yeah, Helen Webberley is definitely under Gender GP. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and basically, parents can go online, and when you look at their website, it's offering, gender affirming care, and I do that in the quotes to people. So if you've got the money, you can fast track your child down this dangerous route of puberty blockers, which leads to cross-sex hormones, which often leads to surgery as well. And I also believe that Susie Green, former Mermaids CEO, she set one up as well. And
well, she went to Gender GP for a while, started working with Helen when she left Mermaids, and then she left Gender GP. No one really knows where she is at the moment, which is quite frightening.
Yeah, for those that don't know as well, Susie Green took her child as a 16-year-old to Thailand.
She got him castrated in Thailand for his 16th birthday.
A young boy being castrated. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack. Jack. Yeah. He'd already been put on puberty blockers, which he had to get from Boston Children's Hospital over in the US, because they weren't issuing puberty blockers to children that young in this country at that point, because he was really young. I think he was 11 or 12.
Wow.
And then she took him to Thailand to castrate him for his 16th birthday. And funny enough, even Thailand has now outlawed child gender mutilation for minors. So, that woman belongs in prison as far as I'm concerned. And Helen, a lot of them belong in prison as far as I'm concerned, but we'll get there. I think.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating that a lot of them are still going and still finding ways to get to these kids.
Another one of these surgeons is Siv Gallagher. She's an Irish woman.
Siv Gallagher.
It's an Irish name, isn't it? I can't know. Is it spelled
Steve? I can't remember the spelling, but it's pronounced Steve Gallagher. But to look at it, it doesn't look like it's
SIDGH or something. It's an Irish name, and she's working out of Miami. Yeah.
She was in Miami, but of course, Ron DeSantis really pinned down on a lot of gender affirming care. So she left Miami, but I do believe that she's continuing things on. But the thing is, in America, I mean, I'm going to touch on a little bit, because one, I don't know much about American ways of life, and two, we're in the UK. But I used to speak quite a lot to a lady called Scott. The name's escaped me, but she was in the What Is a Woman, Matt Walsh's documentary, and got quite. And she's had the full stuff, and I was told that she's still trying. What it is they purposely don't get insurance so that they can't be sued, something like that. So people will know more than me, but I know that she's still doing what she's doing, but I don't know whether she's doing it in Miami.
Okay, shall we pick up your story again? So yeah. No, it's brilliant. It's a really good segue. There's lots of really important information that people might not know, and the people watching this can go off and research those people, because we need to make them famous for what they're doing. And I don't mean famous in a good way.
Yeah.
So you were taken to this group.
Scott Nugent. Sorry, it's just come to me. Scott Nugent.
Oh yes. So
formerly called Kelly. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just while it popped into my head.
Yes, yeah. Look at Scott Nugent as well. It's got a lot to say. Really worth listening to. Yeah. So you went to this group. The parents were taken in one room, and all the children were taken in the other. Do you want to pick up the story from there?
Yeah. So they would pick up their pronoun badges at the door, and the so-called counsellors would take them off all off together. Bearing in mind that they range between 8 and 16, and there would be, on average, over the 3 meetings, I think I saw, well, let me think of the parents that I was with. So probably about 10 or 12 kids, because there was about 10 or 12 parents in there, all, very affirming parents. And by the 3rd meeting, that was when the cog started to turn, and I wasn't so sure anymore. And I started asking some probing questions. I remember saying to one, it's like, how do you know that this is what they really want and they're not ever going to change their mind? And you could feel the room go cold.
I was going to say, how did that go down?
Yeah, not too great. So that was my last meeting. Although, yeah, I mean, this was from the time of sort of affirming and sort of being quite on board to peaking, it was quite a short space of time. Right. Because once you hear, once you're basically handed someone's number and say, you can get drugs under the table, which to me it just screamed black market, to drug your child, and then my own daughter was starting to talk about puberty blockers as well. She'd started binding her breasts at this point. The self-harming as well. I mean, that's a whole other thing. The self-harming had started at some point over this year and had got completely out of control. She had attempted suicide a couple of times. And it's weird because they say, if you don't affirm your child, they'll kill yourself. Well, I was affirming everything and she was still self-harming and still in a bad way. So it's all that, it's a myth. So it was all starting to accumulate. And then it was like a tidal wave. So, it came all at once. And then the final straw, I think, was when my daughter brought up phalloplasty.
Do you want to explain what that is to people that might not know?
So, I mean, she didn't, I think, did she call it a phalloplasty? But I remember maybe she didn't, maybe she said, I can get a penis, Mum. And I said, what?
What?
I was like, how are you going to do that? She said, it's really, really easy. I've seen, people have it done and stuff. They just take a bit of your arm and they just sew it to your groin. And I just sort of looked at her and my mind was going and I'm thinking, well, I'm not a man and I don't have sons, but I couldn't get my head around how that could work.
Yeah.
And also it was a kind of, hang on a minute, this is getting beyond just girls in the playground playing around with pronouns now. This is sort of getting into weird territory. And of course I had the puberty blocker stuff in the back of my mind. So I was like, right. So I stayed calm and she went with her younger sister to stay with her dad for that Easter. And it was his entire Easter that he had on the court order. So it was 2 weeks that I was on my own. And that was when I decided to do the research.
Right.
And I spent the entire 2 weeks just glued to YouTube, everything, and came across some of the most terrifying but yet amazing videos and some of the most fabulous people that I have to thank, really, for helping to save my daughter's life, actually, essentially. So, and if you want me to list them off, I
was just going to say, tell us if you've got details that you want to give about who those people were.
It's a funny thing because I'll tell you who originally actually piqued me. Like, I mean, people have a peaking journey and they will continue to go on to learn new stuff and discover more about the ideology and become more and more knowledgeable as time goes by. But everyone, I think, remembers their first instance where they're no longer woke, they are awake, if you like. And the person who did that for me was a guy called Blair White.
Yes. Incidentally, I've been watching a video of him with Andrew Gold this evening before this.
Really? I don't watch much about him anymore because I am an ultra and I just don't want to entertain any man in a dress.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit whether he thinks he's a woman or whether he knows that he's biologically male. But if there's one thing that I will thank him for, was the fact that because I think I typed in something like trans or trans woman or something like that, and his latest video came up, and of course it was March 22, and during that month, Leah Thomas had just won the NCAA swimming meet against Riley Gaines,
Yeah.
and it was that video.
Yeah, for just people that, for people that don't know who Blair White is, do you want to just give just a
He's
short?
a tranny. He's a gay man who started transitioning quite a number of years ago. People would say, the true transers would say that he's one of the good ones. Some people say, you know, he's quite passable. But if you look at his older videos, before he spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on various surgeries, bearing in mind he's never had his penis cut off.
Yes.
But he's had a lot of stuff done on his face, his body, and everything. And with the right filters, he can look all right. But in the early days, he really didn't pass at all. But you know what? I'm going to say, if there are people like I was back then that are, open-minded and are open to peaking, even if they don't realize it, then he's not necessarily a bad route to go down.
Okay.
If I'm honest, but I moved away from him relatively quickly because then, you know, as soon as sort of really peaked, I thought, well, you're just a bloke in a dress. I want to now listen to the women's rights, you know.
Just for those people, there's a word that you just mentioned quite often, and people might not understand what you mean by that. So you've mentioned the word peaked.
Yeah.
Tell us what you mean.
You know what? I mean, I use it all the time, and I know what it means, but I'm really bad at articulating it. So to me, it's specific to the woke agenda. So it can, I mean, for me, I think it is predominantly in the trans, but it can be in the rest, you know, with climate change, with immigration and stuff like that as well, I think. But I think it is predominantly with the trans, and it is where you move from trans women are women to fuck off, you're a man in a dress.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Is it an enlightenment? Become enlightened.
Yeah, it's red pilled. I mean, some people call it red pill.
Yeah.
Like, you know, with the Matrix, you know, I know that there is also, you know, the men's rights activists like to use the red pill on 4chan and stuff. So I don't tend to use it. But I do love the word peaking.
Yeah.
And that was when I suddenly discovered the word TERF as well, because the first person that I saw after Blair White was Magdalene Burns. Sorry. And I still cry because I didn't know she passed away when I watched her. So, and she was such an amazing woman. And although Blair White peaked me, Magdalene Burns started my journey, because it was her videos that made me laugh and cry in equal measures. I fell in love with her immediately, and then when I found out that she'd passed away before I even discovered her, I cried, and I can't remember the last time I cried over someone that I didn't even know existed. Wow. And then I found people like, I mean, Kelly J. Keane is just phenomenal. Yeah. And I've kind of stuck with Kelly more often than not all the way through. I do dive into other things, and, you know, I read a lot of books and stuff, but Kelly is, to me, is the epitome of what this movement should be and how we should be thinking about it.
Yeah, so that's Kelly J. Keane, and she's got a website, Let Women Speak.
Let Women Speak, yeah, formerly standingforwomen.com, but it's changed to letwomenspeak.org. She's also got a political party called Party of Women, which I'm a member of. But she's on YouTube. If you just put in Posey Parker or Kelly J. Keane, you'll find her. And God, the trouble is, I tend not to, if I find somebody who knows nothing about any of this and is quite sensitive, I don't necessarily lead them straight to Kelly because she is hardcore.
She is
But,
very hardcore.
but I know they'll end up at Kelly because the algorithm.
I'll just say a little bit about Kelly, actually, because last summer, I was at a freedom festival called Jam for Freedom. And I'd followed Kelly I'd heard of Kelly a year or two before on the Richie Allen radio show. So I was aware of her, and she was giving a talk at the Jam for Freedom Festival. And it got to questions at the end, and I stood up and said, "What can the real men do to help your cause?" And she basically said they need to stand up and find a voice. So that sat with me for a while. And this was last August, I believe. I think it was August. So I'd been thinking for a while. I had other things that I'd been doing, but it just stayed with me. And I thought, I'm going to do something. And it took me a while to formulate it. And then come the winter time, my wife and I went away, and we had a lot of time while I was away. And I was following Chris Elston, Billboard Chris from Canada. And I thought, I've got to do that, but I don't want to directly copy him. I've got to find my own way of doing it,
Yeah.
And I know Chris is like the OG. He's the master, but his main focus is.
If it works, then I'm sure that he appreciates it. And we said
I reached
yesterday,
out to him. Yeah,
there's Billboard Steve as well, and he's over in New Hampshire and stuff.
Yes, of course. I think he calls himself Sidewalk Steve. Actually,
Sidewalk Steve. Sorry, Sidewalk Steve. Yes, sorry.
People say that I should use the name Sandwich Board Steve. I have been called a Temu Billboard Chris, or like a pound shop. I call myself a pound shop Billboard Chris, but I wanted to do it a little bit differently. And for me, there's three issues here. I mean, Chris focuses fantastically on the puberty blockers with children, but there's also, women's spaces are being invaded by these men.
Yeah.
And it's also, these are the things, it's a war on the truth, it's a war on reality, and it's a war on freedom of speech,
Absolutely.
and you've just got to look at how we're shut down by these trans rights activists. They actually prove our point.
Yeah.
So I just wanted a little interjection there.
No, yeah. I've been following Billboard Chris for a long time. I mean, when I'm not suspended on Twitter, I do. I'll follow anybody, and it's not always. You don't always have to agree with everything that everybody, says and does and stuff.
Yeah, of course. We're adults.
If it's helping the movement, then
we're adults. So many people fall out with other people just because they disagree on one topic. If you disagree, just agree to disagree, but focus on what you agree on. Before we carry on with the story of your daughter, just another segue. So going back to Kelly J. Keane, she'd seen some of the stuff that I'd been doing on with my boards, and she saw it on Twitter, on X. And then she sent me a message and she said, "There's no such thing as gender dysphoria," because I use that term, right?
Yes. And I said this to you last night.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, then I need to be educated on this, because I've listened to people like Billboard Chris talking about this. I've listened to other so-called experts, and Kelly J. Keane said to me, "There's no such thing." She's very direct, and that's great. I love that. But I've not had a reply from her. I said, "Okay, educate me," but she's not replied to me. So educate me.
To me, it's a true trans type thing, and I can understand sometimes why some people say it if they're talking to a diehard TRA, because they're trying to find some kind of common ground and some way in. And the one thing I love about Kelly is she doesn't give up her stance and her morals for anything. It's like, I don't believe it, so that's it. But if you go back to the 60s with John Money invented, if you like, gender identity. And it was then that it was pushed into the DSM-5, which I've said to you last night, coming from a domestic abuse background, of safeguarding background. Most of what's in the DSM-5 is bollocks.
Just tell people what the DSM-5 is.
So it's a diagnostic manual for mental disorders, and it is the Bible for any psychologist or psychiatrist all over the world, or certainly all over the Western world. And it was originally put in there as a mental illness, and then the TRAs fought for it to be moved to a sexual identity. So it's basically been put in with the LGB.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. It's completely made up. How can you have a gender identity? And the thing is, if you ask anybody on any side, what is gender identity, none of them can ever answer. And if any of them do actually answer, they go straight to stereotypes.
Yeah.
Straight to stereotypes, because there is nothing else. And all this talk of ladies' brains and male brains, there's no evidence to back it up. It's all myth. It's like the suicide myth, the 41%, commit suicide and all the rest of it. It's all just myth. It's all made up. It's all TRAs writing these peer reviews, getting them reviewed by other TRAs. It's all an absolute myth. This is all trauma-based stuff. If you look at anybody that claims to be struggling from any kind of emotional or mental distress or disorder, if you delve into it, there's always something underlying. And the two main things tend to be learning disabilities and trauma. So whether they've been abused domestically, physically, psychologically, sexually, whatever. I mean, I'm diagnosed with PTSD. Now, PTSD isn't classed as a mental disorder. It's classed as a trauma response. And I don't take anything for my PTSD. But it's just recognized the fact that I have suffered years and years of trauma through abuse. And that, for a period of time, I had adverse effects from that. And if you've got somebody who has gone through trauma, somebody who is autistic, somebody who has internalized homophobia, say, then they're going to grasp onto anything. And if they get told about something like gender dysphoria, then they're just going to leap on it. But yeah, it does. I mean, you could just pick it out the sky. I mean, it's like histrionic disorder. You just pick it out of the sky. It's just, there's no evidence to prove it whatsoever. It's just that, and if they ever did prove it, like on a real scientific medical with scans and blood tests and all the rest of it, then we can have a conversation. But until then, no, it's bollocks. John Money and Alfred Kinsey made up a lot of this stuff. And it's funny how a lot of these types of disorders originate with devious men. Like in deviating slightly, in the domestic abuse arena, I work a lot within family court. There was a syndrome that was invented in the 80s, early 90s by a guy called Richard Gardner, and it was parental alienation syndrome. And it turned out he was a paedophile, and he invented it to say, well, no, these kids are wanting to be with their mums and they're traumatized because the mums have told them that their dads are evil. But really, in most cases, they were being sexually abused by the father or an uncle, or sometimes the mother. Sometimes it would be flipped, but so yeah, it's. I don't have time for a lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Okay, right. It's
I
interesting.
hope that makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah, no, because I've just been taking it as read. I mean, I'm learning all the time with this, and I'm the kind of person that'll reevaluate their stance when new evidence comes to light, you see. So I'm going to look into that.
I just see it's personalities. I mean, the way that you could argue it is, well, it's just a personality. you know, my personality as a woman isn't the same as the next personality that a woman might have. You know, it doesn't mean that, you know, we're not women, or that there's something, we're doing something different with our gender. In fact, the whole word gender just needs to piss off, if you ask me. And as someone who used to be a feminist and is no longer a feminist, there's no need for the word gender at all anymore.
It used to be synonymous with sex, and that's what people think.
Yeah.
So you know, and this is it's the conflation of sex and gender, which then allows, you know, because they call it the Gender Recognition Act 2004, which allows somebody to legally get the sex changed on their birth certificate.
Yeah.
Which then legally allows them into opposite sex spaces.
And that's what makes it so insidious. And that's why we need to repeal the GRA. We absolutely need to repeal the GRA.
Yeah.
You know, and with Kelly on that 100%. We need to get rid of the GRA. We need to get gender reassignment out of the Equality Act. In fact, to be honest with you, scrap the Equality Act and rewrite. Get out of the European Human Rights Act and have our own Human Rights Act here. I mean, you know, we have supposed to have left the European Union, so I've heard. So, you know, we are now a sovereign country. Let's, you know, we made a lot of mistakes. People just need to realize, we messed up. And that's the thing as well, you know, this is why I go on a lot of these things, because I feel that there's not enough people that are willing to say, I fucked up. With my daughter, for nearly a year and a half, I fucked up. I messed with her a lot, and I've left a lot of damage, and I've left a lot of psychological damage, and there is still a lot of psychological damage there because of me, and the physical damage is there partly because of me.
And that's because
I was an idiot.
The affirmation route, is that right?
Yeah,
you affirmed it. So
absolutely.
Before we go on to complete the story, what would you say to parents? In fact, no, let's do that question later, because that comes at the end of it. So you got to the stage where your daughter started talking about, hey, I can have a penis.
Yeah, so they went off to the dad's for Easter. I did the research, I peaked, and she came home to a completely different mum.
Okay, tell us how that went.
And I changed everything. And anyone who knows me will know that I wasn't delicate. Put it that way.
I can sense that from you. You know, I can sense that
when
you've got something in your sights.
I knew what I'd done. I was horrified at what I'd done. I was horrified of what I potentially could have done if I hadn't researched and peaked. I was disgusted by the whole ideology, and I hated it. Immediately, I viscerally hated it, and hated myself for allowing it into my house. And so I said, this is what's happened, and I don't believe in any of it anymore, and this is what's going to happen. And she hated my guts for about 6 months. I was transphobic. I was a bigot. I was, you know, all this stuff that I never really, certainly never heard come out of her mouth. I remember she had one of her friends over, who she was a they them, and she was in the bedroom, and I overheard them talking. I can't remember what it was specifically, but it was trans stuff. And I opened the bedroom door. I said, we're not having these discussions in my house. This isn't happening anymore. You know, we're back to reality. And my daughter's friend said, but trans women are women. And I just went, get the fuck out of my house. I'm not having it. And I kicked her out of my house.
Wow.
So bless it, my daughter had a tough time, but looking back, I don't think there was any other way of going about it.
It was tough parenting, but you did the right thing. You know, I've seen kind of like one of these memes of different types of kind of like trans identifying things and what do you do with them. And under the category which your daughter fits in, they said, what do they need? Understanding, but firm pushback.
Yeah.
Rather than affirmation.
Yeah.
But I suppose there wasn't that firm pushback at the start, which made it much more difficult.
So and I went straight to the doctors and the dentist and said, you know, it's going. But it's so funny because when I changed her pronouns to he, him, and to the boy's name, it was straight away. Yep, no problem. Updated. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
When I wanted to go back to her birth name and her birth sex, I had to go in with her birth certificate.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I had a meeting with the school. I mean, I had a really good communication with the school because of the self-harming, and we had early help involved with that, and various counsellors and stuff, and pastoral care. So I had a really good line of communication with the school by that point. So I immediately set up a meeting with the school, not with my daughter present, and I said, right, I'm a TERF now, basically. I don't think I said it like that, but I basically sat down and said, right, and I bought a copy of all the books I'd read. I bought extra copies, gave them to the school, read them. I sent them all the bump on that Transgender Trend had on their website, everything I could find, GenSpect, everything. I just sent it all over to them, and I said, I have made a huge mistake. This needs to stop. I want this reversed right now. And to be fair, they were okay with it. They were just like, well, you're the parent, you know. They weren't like, oh, thank God, because we're TERFs and we were wondering what the fuck you were doing. But they were like, yeah, well, you're the parent, so yeah, okay, we'll go back. We'll step back on it.
It's weird because the affirmation was parent led. What we're hearing now is that it's very much led by the education system, and they're keeping it from parents.
Yeah, I think a lot of schools are, and I have heard from a lot of parents, because I'm part of organisations like Our Duty as well that are fantastic, that a lot of schools are doing it behind the parents' back. I did ask that question after I peaked. I said, you know, do you socially transition at any of the kids without the parents knowing? And they said no. He said, what we do is we say, no, that's fine. We'll change your name and pronouns and stuff, but your parents need to email. And they say 9 times out of 10 we don't get the email.
Right.
So, and I live in quite a conservative area, to be honest with you. Lincolnshire, you know, we're pretty common sense. We're pretty boots on the ground. You know, we're blue collar. We're tough workers. You know, we're pretty common sense around here. So, so the school were okay. I mean, my younger daughter, who's a year behind my elder one, she did bring back some dodgy material that was taught to her in PHSE about gender identity, and she told me they'd shown them a YouTube video about a woman that was transitioning to be a man and her journey on testosterone. Turned out they were showing videos of Jamie Dodger. Don't know whether you've heard of her. Real nasty TRA, female to male. So I slammed down very hard on the guy that produced that lesson, and I stayed on his back until he pulled the lesson.
Well done. Very well done.
People don't mess with me.
No, I can tell. So you had this rough 6-month period. Yeah. When did it start? Tell us how it got better from that. When did it start to get better?
She moved away from the friendship group, found a new friendship group, and they were all pretty level-headed. There were no trans and stuff in that group. The self-harming was still going on a bit, but I got her a really good, some really good counselling and stuff. She also disclosed to me that she had been sexually assaulted while she was living with her dad years previous. So things started to make sense, and she was ready to report that to the police. So that all started happening and things like that. And so the healing process just had to sort of start, really, I think. And I was, you know, thing is, it was difficult because whenever she went to her dad's, he was still affirming, but I know he was doing that just to piss me off. So there were, you know, and her friends were still, some of them were still sort of, you know, confused at the very least, if not still affirming at school. She's just finished her GCSEs, and she's left, and she was adamant she wasn't going to do her A levels there. She's starting at college in September. And we went to an induction day last week. And on the way back in the car, I said, I bet you are so relieved and just looking forward to turning your back on that chapter of your life and being an unknown in this next chapter, and you can start again. And she said, yeah,
Oh,
I'm looking forward to that. So
what age is she now, did you say?
she's 16.
16, right, fantastic. Yeah, and she never took any of the medication. It was just literally
No,
a
just the combination pill, which did mess around. I mean, those were her own hormones, and they messed around with her enough. You know, she put on a lot of weight. She got quite a lot of acne. The ironic thing was that it also, because of the weight, it made her hips wider, gave her a big bum, gave her a big boob.
Okay.
So it kind of did the opposite of what she wanted to do. But no, thank God.
Yeah.
The only thing that she's left with physically is the scars from the self-harm.
Okay.
But yeah, otherwise, yeah, it makes my blood run cold when I think of, you know, what path I could have gone down. But yeah, luckily I grew a brain at some point. But I was a twat for a long time, and that's why I want to get out, you know, to parents. Don't be ashamed. Don't feel embarrassed. We love our children. We want what's best for our children. Don't be ashamed. And I think, you know, I mean, maybe some people would argue that there is a line where you can go too far. I think allowing your child to physically mutilate themselves is maybe questionable. But to me, I just think it's never too late to bring it back.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so after that, you became a little bit of an activist. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the event? Was it in the centre of Lincoln?
Yes. So I decided to do my own sort of little mini Let Women Speak in Lincoln, because as yet Kelly hasn't made it to Lincoln. So Kelly, if you're watching this, come to Lincoln. And what it was is Primark had just changed their policy. And Kelly did a live stream about it and was, you know, rightly really riled up about it. And she said, if anyone wants to, you know, do their own sort of little protest in any of your towns outside your Primarks, go for it. So I did. and I advertised it only for a couple of weeks, because it was all very rushed, because we'd only heard that Primark were doing this and they were rolling it out, you know, within days, sort of thing. And so I thought chocolates that I'd got from Kelly and stuff like that. I'm just going to go and stand and took my loudspeaker, and I'm just going to just say a few things and just hand out some leaflets. And
you're on your own. You're on your own.
There was me and one other woman.
Right.
I was contacted later on that day by other women who did say, I planned to come, or I did come, and then I saw the TRAs and I chickened out. And I don't blame
trans rights activists. Can we have a look at them?
But I didn't realise how big how many TRAs had heard about it until the chief of Lincolnshire Police actually called me on the phone. How he got my number, I still don't know. About 3 days before, and he said, "We've been told that you're going to Lincoln to do an anti-trans rally." And I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, kind of, but," I said, "I'm going to Lincoln to go outside Primark to sort of protest the gender-neutral changing rooms, if that's what you mean." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Just to let you know, it's got round." And apparently it made it onto Reddit. I don't do Reddit. It made it onto Tumblr. I don't do Tumblr.
Yeah.
Facebook. I mean, everywhere. And me and the other women that turned up, we estimated, I mean, you can't even tell by that photo, but they were all the way down the high street.
And there's you. There's you.
200 to 250 TRAs turned up. And I'm like 5'2", maybe 3 at a push. I'm about £90. I had about 15, 20 leaflets on me, because it is a case of when you order something from Kelly, which I do a lot, she chucks a few leaflets in each time, and I saved them. And so I had about 20 odd leaflets, and I had my flag, which is actually up behind me. I don't know whether you can see.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I had my loudspeaker, but that didn't even make it out of the bag, because I thought, no, I'm not. And I stayed there for 2 hours, and I was terrified for the whole 2 hours. But I thought, no, I'm here. I'm gonna. I said I'd do it. I'm gonna do it.
Brilliant. Well done.
So I did it.
Who's actually keeping them back from you?
There were police were there for most of it. There seemed to be some kind of stewards, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't book anybody. It was funny though, because I was also contacted by local journalists, which again was hilarious. It was like, would message me, text me, and say, we're Lincolnshire Live, which is a newspaper and a local radio station, to interview me. And I was like, okay, fine. It was June, so it's Pride Month. But June 20, was it 22 or 23? It might have been 23. And so I was surprised that I was getting anything. But then I heard that local businesses were offering themselves out as safe spaces for the trannies to go to if I made them feel unsafe. Me.
Listen, yeah, it's insidious. It's a long march through the institutions. It's got in all the workplaces, schools, colleges, emergency services. I'm an ex-firefighter. You know, we had to go if we were working when the local Pride event was on. They'd send the fire engine there. You know, they'd offer us rainbow lanyards, rainbow shoelaces. You know, if you want us to get promoted, and you have to provide evidence, a surefire way of getting in the good books would to become an LGBTQIA+.
So, from the inside, I know you're only one person that worked in one fire service, Steve, but did you get the impression that it was being chucked down, but we just got to go along with it for our job?
Yeah, 100%. They brought a fire chief into Greater Manchester Fire Service, and his whole remit was to change the culture. There's been this kind of like this culture of management bullying, and they're going to give us a voice and stuff like that. But it wasn't about that at all. It was to introduce the alphabet people. Every fire station had started to get a board, an LGBTQ board, you know, and you could become an ally, and you could get a badge saying that you was an ally. It was
the thing that I worry about with, especially with things like police and fire services, is the DEI and the way they're pushing the DEI. Because, you know, after watching the fires happening in LA, and the fire chief was being interviewed, and she literally said, DEI, we want to be able to hire everybody so that that if you need, you have someone like you rescuing you. And I sat there and I thought, if I'm in one of the 3 emergency services, the last person I want to come out to save me is someone who looks like me. I do not want a 90-pound, skinny as hell, short-ass woman to come and save me and get me out of a fire. I'm sorry. You know. Yeah,
well, I saw the standards drop. I mean, I always wanted to be a firefighter as a young kid, and I couldn't, because everybody knows I'm only 5'5" tall, and you had to be a certain height. They did drop the height standards, but they never dropped the standards that you had to conform to. Now, I've always been
come in and save me from a fire.
I've always been a sportsman, and I've always taken my physical fitness and my strength very, very seriously. And I do, to this day, I train. I'm a 54-year-old guy that's still a fitness fanatic, and I had to prove myself. And I could do the job. That's the thing. But I saw these they used to call it not DEI, but EDI. So
Yeah,
it's
sorry,
equality.
I'm using the American term. I think
Yeah.
it's EDI in the UK.
Either way, it's still the same three letters, isn't it? It's still the same three things. But I've seen the standards drop. I absolutely seen the standards drop. People that got into the job that weren't capable of doing it, and the operational readiness of the fire service across the board has reduced. I can say that firsthand because I saw it happen.
Yeah. It's terrifying. As a member of the public, it's terrifying because it's endangering people's lives. When you come to the police, obviously with the two-tier policing, you know, I'm off to London. I'm not ashamed to say I'm off to London on the 13th of September for Tommy Robinson's rally and stuff. You know, we need to get our country back in every way possible, and we need to get common sense back. We need reality back, and we need our culture back, and we need it yesterday.
Yeah, do you know what?
I'm far right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a far right Nazi now. I mean, I was a union member. You know, the unions have bought into this ideology now.
Oh God!
Yeah. I think that's kind of like a good point to end it on. Before we go, where can people find you on social media if they want to follow you?
I mainly just Twitter. So at Taylor Advocate _ is my current. I do tend to have a habit of being suspended, but I'm going to try not to be suspended at least for a while. But that's it. I don't know if you put. I have done various YouTube interviews, but I don't know whether if you put me into YouTube, whether you'd find those videos, or whether you'd have to put in the hosts. But I don't know. But yeah, certainly I'm really active on Twitter. So if anyone wants to find me on there, and if they want to see any other podcasts I've done, then I'm happy to DM them the links and stuff.
Fantastic. And I think it's a good point to let people know that we did speak last night, and we did say that we were going to arrange to go out on the streets together at a location yet to be determined. That's another thing. People ask where you go, and I want to come, and I want to back you up and shake your hand. Can't really advertise where we're going to be because this happens.
That happens. I've made that mistake. Don't make the same mistake as I did.
So for all those people that would like to come and meet us, we'd love that to happen, but we can't advertise our movements in advance because these trans rights activists, the TRAs, they're watching us.
If anyone's following me on Twitter and stuff, you know, and I know you and I can trust you, I'm happy to DM you and let you know secretly on the DL. But otherwise, don't make the same mistake I made, Steve. We'll be up against the dry
my dry cleaning bill now. I've never dry cleaned as many suits in my life as I have done over these past few months. Yeah, ruined shirts. But there you go.
It's all the kind brigade, isn't it? Apparently, all peace and love.
Yeah. The opposite of what they profess to be, and the more that they do, it's the Streisand effect, isn't it? You know, if you try and keep something quiet or shut something up, your actions in trying to do that will have a massive effect of publicity.
Yeah.
So cover me in more soup and hot chili sauce and sticky syrup.
Yes, very true.
No, I'm not giving you authority to do that if you're watching. No, I'd rather you didn't, to be honest.
Yeah. They to be honest, they pick more people than we do, I think. So especially after the Supreme Court ruling when they did the pissing in London. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I thought, are you that stupid? Yes, you clearly are.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, no, but thank you so much for having me on, and do keep in touch, and I look forward to meeting you at some point in the future. It's amazing, you know, anything that is helping kids like my daughter is just amazing. So thank you.
Yeah.
On behalf of all the parents and all the kids, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.